When I first came to Vietnam in 2015, it was seriously one of the coolest things I ever did. Wild cities, amazing parties, easy money, and I could literally pay my way out of any situation. However, with the good, really does come the bad. So this video is coming from getting a few video requests from you guys about why people don't return to Vietnam. And that's what I want to talk about today. First impressions of Vietnam. My first impression of coming to Vietnam in 2015 during Tet was seriously an amazing experience. And the things like pollution, the noise, the karaoke, the chaos, it wasn't enough to slow me down and enjoy what Vietnam actually had to offer and how the experience was. But living in Vietnam for 11 years combined, my opinion has definitely changed. And I think back, the constant parties, the karaoke, and the endless supplies of food costing only 50 cents for a whole meal. It turned into being something exciting to something that was more of a hazard. And I think a big part of this change really came down to me quitting the whole drinking thing. Being sober in Vietnam is seriously a hard thing to do. When I first got here in 2015, I landed in the Saigon International Airport. And I walked outside the main gate. You feel like a superstar. There's just hundreds of people standing there waiting for somebody. And they all look at you thinking, wondering if you're the one they're looking for. You're not. But when you get past that, you start seeing the constant hustling, the chaos, the yelling, the pushing. And you have taxi drivers bumping into you, grabbing you, trying to take you to the nearest hotel or the bar. It's seriously a surreal feeling for the first time. Once you get out of the airport, that's kind of where you end up, is in a tourist area where you're gonna be bombarded by a bunch of vendors, a bunch of scamming, a bunch of people trying to sell you something. And honestly, this stuff never ends. If you say no to a vendor, 2 seconds later, another vendor's coming and selling you the same exact thing. When I first got here, it was kind of cool because I've never experienced this kind of stuff. And growing up in a Vietnamese community my whole life, I was actually living the life that they escaped from. And I kind of understood why after a while. And when it comes to the food, when you first get here, Vietnam has to have some of the most amazing food in all of Asia. But the reality is, once you get here, you start seeing how the food's made, you start seeing the handling of it. It becomes some of the most unhealthy food. And it's not because of what it is, it's how it's managed, it's how it's cooked, where it's stored, stuff like that. And plus, washing your hands in Vietnam after smoking, going to the bathroom, stuff like that, that's just something people don't do. And again, it's good food. It's just ideally not very healthy food. Now, when you first get here, there's always this mentality of Vietnamese people are so sweet, they're so nice to you. People's attitudes and friendliness can change very quick when you start getting out of the main cities and tourist areas. There's no real respect for personal space. And again, it's just the culture. I mean, go to a coffee shop, sit down and just look around. You're gonna see people, their fingers 4 feet up their nose, spitting stuff on the ground, yelling, feet on the table. But it's definitely not the manners you would see in any other Asian country. We're visiting the country, we're the tourists here. But there is a point where it's kind of I'm really trying to defend Vietnam on this one, guys, but I can't. You know, if you're eating like a horse, your feet on the table, spitting on everything, picking your nose while you're talking to people. I mean, what do you expect? Anyways, let's get on to the next one, overcharging and scams. Now, when it comes to scams, you're gonna run into these in tourist and non-tourist areas alike. There really is no discrimination when it comes to scams. This is something Vietnamese deal with all the time. So you are not alone on this. And once you start learning Vietnamese, if you choose to, and you start talking to Vietnamese and you're going out to bars with them and listening to them talk, this is stuff you'll hear a lot of the girls actually talking about, is getting scammed a lot of different markets or getting their hair done and getting upcharged. And I will say on the flip side of this, it's very common for customers to also try to scam the stores. One thing I always find funny is you'll see Vietnamese, the older ladies, they'll go to a Lotto Mart or a Co-op. These are big Walmarts in Vietnam. And they'll go to the vegetables or produce section and they'll look for food that is rotten marks on it, has mold on it, stuff like that. Food that they should be taking off because it's been there too long. They'll grab this food, they'll take it to the counter and they'll start fighting the clerk for a discount on food that you really can't eat. It's weird, but this stuff does happen. Customers are always trying to haggle. The stores are always trying to haggle. It's just something that we all deal with on both sides. And the scams aren't limited to just stores. They're taxis. They're your actual phone bills out here. Your power bill, electricity bill, whatever bills, anything out here that costs money is gonna be a scam. I've rented full-size houses out here and had the electric company scamming me on the power bill. The guy that comes to your house to collect the money. He was actually upcharging my bill to pocket it. You see what I'm saying? Like, so this stuff happens all the time. And this is something you see with like agents when you go to like tourist areas. Like Halong Bay is a big tourist area for Vietnamese. Anytime I took trips, I came back, back home for say in Saigon or Hanoi, wherever I was staying, and I talked to my Vietnamese friends, the first question always out of their mouth is, how much did you pay? Because that's something that all Vietnamese deal with. And I know this is gonna sound petty, like we're talking about a few dollars here and there. Like, you're not getting scammed for 50, you're getting scammed for $1.50 here and there. But it does add up. If you allow it to happen once, it will continue to happen. So you have to question it at first, or just stop going to that shop. It's never about the future. Like, even if it's a month-to-month reoccurring bill with a customer, like you're ordering water every month or something like that, they don't care. They want to know how much money can they get out of you right now. Even if they get an extra $5 out of you and you don't return because they scammed you out of $5, they don't care. If you do end up moving here, just make friends with local markets, find your spots, and those are where you want to mostly return. If you're ever getting a 200 or a 500 Vietnamese đồng bill, say no all the time. Vietnamese do not accept this money back. I had a stack like this big years ago of 500 and 200 Vietnamese đồng, and I took it to Vietnam Bank where I had a bank account for a while. They refused to accept it. Why they still print them, I don't know. But Vietnamese typically burn the 200 bills for the dead, and the $500 bills are kind of the same thing. Even if you have, like, let's say your bill is like 3,000 Vietnamese đồng and you give them 6 500s, they will not take it. Don't let stores give them to you if you can avoid it. But if they do, they do. And I've noticed that like co-ops and stuff like that, they know they won't take them back. And they'll have like a donation machine right next to the register. And if you look inside of it, because they're clear, it's just 500 Vietnamese đồng bills. So I think they know what they're doing. Like, they're just giving you this change and then taking it out of the donation and giving it back to customers. It's not a donation box. It's Vietnam. Vietnam doesn't do charity. When it comes to transportation with scams, this is where it gets nasty. The buses and dealing with agents. Typically the agents and online websites and stuff like that, they're always trying to upsell you on stuff that they can't offer you. My advice for you guys is to go directly to bus stations. Don't buy them online. Don't buy them from agents. Just go to the actual bus terminal. Go to the clerk. The prices are always on the wall. Point to whatever the hell it is and just pay the money and get going. I think this is where a lot of Western people get scammed. Like, excessively. Like, you'll get these agents that say like, hey, this bus has Wi-Fi if you want this one, or this one has a bathroom on it, yada yada yada, all these extras, like a Greyhound bus or something. And when you get on these buses, most buses in Vietnam don't have Wi-Fi, but they all say they do. And the ones that have bathrooms, dude, they're disgusting. The thing about all this is you'll never get refunded. And the reason for this is the moment you pay for that bus ticket, the money is separated between the staff, the manager, and the bus driver themselves. So if you go back there and ask for a refund, they have no money to give you. They've literally already spent your money. And also ferries and piers, when you go to these spots, walk past a lot of people. You're gonna walk past agents, people outside selling pieces of paper saying, hey, we got a bus going to this city or a ferry going across this way. Try to avoid them if you can, and go to the pier terminal itself, go to the bus terminal itself. This is actually quite common in Saigon for the ferries. This is extremely common in Hanoi, Halong Bay, Vinh City areas for the buses. Is people will sell you fake tickets, ask for like $200-300K, which is like $10 or $15. You go to the bus, you show them this ticket, they look at you and be like, this isn't a ticket. We don't have tickets. We don't accept this ticket. It's not our ticket. Avoid these people. This is a big problem in Vietnam. This has been a problem for like 10 years, to the point where the government's trying to stop it. And if you guys have ever done the border run from Saigon to Cambodia, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The agents there are ruthless. Like, they will literally make friends with the immigration officers to the point where you can't get your visa until you pay this agent to do nothing. The government has actually fixed the border issue. Like, I did a visa run there like 4 months ago, and there was almost no Vietnamese. Also, the e-visa kind of negates them even having anything to do, because what are they going to do with an e-visa? Like, they can't help you. They can't bribe you for anything because there's no fee to pay. It's already been paid for. You see what I mean? So get e-visas. Cool. So let's get to one of the biggest issues of Vietnam: trash and pollution. Trash in Vietnam is endless. It never ends. And by the time we get through with this section, you're going to start questioning the food that you eat in Vietnam and the stuff that you drink out here. And for you guys that have come here and you've done the bike ride from the south to the north motorbike thing, the Ho Chi Minh Trail and stuff like that, you're gonna know exactly what I'm talking about, because that entire drive is like driving through a land filled with palm trees. It's ridiculous how bad it is out here. Now, the reason for this is because the people don't care. There's this mindset in Vietnam, and I believe China has this too. Let me kind of break them both down for you. In Vietnam, the idea is if you throw it on the ground, the government's going to clean it up. In China, there's this idea, correct me if I'm wrong, that if you throw garbage on the ground, it creates a job for somebody else to pick it up and they make a salary, is the idea. Vietnam doesn't say it like that, but they have the same mentality, if that makes sense. So it's very common for people just to throw garbage everywhere without even second guessing it. It's insane actually how bad it is. People will pull over in their car and just throw bottles out everywhere. If you're standing somewhere, like they'll throw, I've been Vung Tau City, I did a beach video there was plastic cups everywhere. And again, we're not talking about like just like cups and straws on the ground. Like we're talking food, plastic bags, cups, trash, tables, beds. You name it, it is everywhere. People just put shit in bags and they just throw it on the side of the road. Now, there are garbage cans out here. There are dumpsters out here, and even with those, you'll see the garbage can empty, and around it is just trash everywhere. And it's too much. Like in all realistic speaking, there's 99 million people in Vietnam all trashing it. It's what everybody does. Like I think Sweden and Norway and France have a lot of like cleanup programs out here that they've tried to clean Vietnam up, but you can't win. When the people don't care, no company can fix the problem. Like again, 99 million people in Vietnam are throwing trash on the ground without a second thought. Who can outpace that? Nobody. When you get into the water, the oceans, and most of Vietnam, not all of it, but most of it, you're gonna get a bag stuck on your foot. You're gonna like step on trash that's like sunk to the ground, or when you get out, you're gonna have like oil streaks all over your body from like just like grease and stuff like that from food. It's just insane how bad, and it's only gotten worse. Vietnam is definitely one of the dirtiest countries I think I've seen in a long time, and it just keeps getting worse. When I was in Korea, when I was in Japan, when I was in Singapore, Malaysia, well, Malaysia's questionable, but it was just clean, it was respectful. People like picked up garbage if they saw it there when they're walking around. But when you come to Vietnam, it's just a dump. There's no other word for it. Vietnam is the size of California, and they put more pollution in the ocean than 98% of the world. Like, think about that for a minute. You see how people act, it's just like, nobody cares. But this is a big reason why people don't return, is it's so dirty. And I did tell you that you're probably gonna question about eating out here. One thing about living in Vietnam, if you get to like the farm towns outside the main cities, a lot of farmers will buy people's trash. And the reason for this is we don't have anywhere to put it sometimes because the government doesn't pick up all the trash as they think they do. After a harvest, what'll happen is they gotta burn, the grass and the wheat and stuff like that so they can re-harvest or regrow new rice and vegetables and fruit. What they'll do is they'll buy all this trash Vietnamese will bring their trash to the farmers, give them money to take the trash, right? And the farmers will burn their fields and they'll throw all the trash in there. So all this plastic, this cow shit, dog shit, straws, paper, whatever is being thrown in, just think about what you throw away at home. That's what's being burnt. It's being burnt in this ground. This ground is where the Vietnam food comes from. This ground is where a lot of the fruit juices and milk teas come from. So when you're eating Vietnam food, think about that. You're actually eating recycled tires and plastic and all this other shit. And again, this is why I say Vietnam food is so healthy on paper. But in reality, Vietnamese food is some of the most unhealthiest food in Asia because of just this stuff. And if you want to dig into the facts of this, Vietnam is no longer the biggest exporter of fruit, rice, and other foods. Coffee is the only thing Vietnam has anymore. That's a high export. And the reason for it is Vietnam has failed all health inspections. A lot of Asia no longer approves Vietnam import foods because of the health concerns. Again, pollution, but nobody cares because the government picks it up for us, right? I'm digressing way too much, guys. But point case being, plays the shit. Let's get to the last one, noise pollution. Noise pollution in Vietnam is just insane. It never ends. There's loud karaoke, there's yelling, there's people on their speakerphones yelling in closed environments. I mean, you got honking, you got constant motor noise for no reason. Like I see people honking at their doors. Like, it's just like there'll be a person right here, literally the guy on a motorbike right here, and he'll just start honking. He won't even use his words. He just honks. And I see a lot of people talk about like the horn in Vietnam is a means of communication. It is. I think it's the only means of communication. Like there's no way to say like, hey, can you please move? Or like, hey, can you get the fuck off the sidewalk? I'm trying to drive here. This is normal. If you become a teacher out here, you will realize where it starts. Kids are loud. Like, you get into these classrooms, they are yelling, they're screaming. It happens in the classrooms. When you get to coffee shops, like, it's coffee shops multiplied by 10. Bus stations are out of control, like hospitals, driving traffic. There's no peace. Like right now, recording this video for you guys, I can hear, right here's the road on the other side of this wall. I can just hear honking and yelling right now. Like it just never ends. And it is 11:45 p.m. right now. Never ends. And really, you can just see this stuff. If you go to a normal Vietnamese restaurant, you're gonna see people spitting on the ground, throwing trash on the ground. Nobody gives a shit out here. And it's not just like bad or like a little too much. It's like out of fucking control. Customer service in Vietnam. Customer service is a weird one. It's almost non-existent. And like, just to give you a rundown, when you go to a restaurant, the typical process is you sit down, you start yelling, a waiter comes over, like a little annoyed with their phone in their hand. She throws down the menu, gives you the order. She looks around, is there anybody Asian at this table? Oh, they look Vietnamese. Gives the order forward to them and walks off. While they're still texting, right when she walks away, there are 3 or 4 beer girls, like Tiger girls, Heineken girls, will walk over. They'll be trying to force feed you or sell you like the beer of the day. If you don't drink, they get pissed off at you. They kind of like snarl at you. If you say yes, the other girls are pissed off because you picked that girl. That's kind of a cool part if you do drink, because they keep your beer full at all times. Like they'll come over and like keep your cup full. So that's kind of a cool thing. The beer girls have really good customer service. The staff don't really. Now, when it comes to sitting down and eating, you're typically gonna have vendors come up to you. They're gonna be trying to sell you food while you're eating food, which is weird to me. But that is kind of a lot of things you deal with there. Now, let me give you the other side, because I know a lot of Vietnamese watch my videos, and I don't want them to think that I'm attacking them as shitty customer service people. In Vietnam, customers are assholes. I told you earlier about how the lady goes through the store finding rotten vegetables and tries to get a discount for it, right? When you're dealing with Vietnamese customers, typically they sit down, they treat waitresses and waiters like shit because they're poor people, right? So they typically yell at them, they'll throw shit at them, they constantly cuss at them, blowing smoke in their face. The beer girls, I truly feel bad for a lot of them. Like they get treated very bad. They get forced to drink with these guys. The guys start groping them and stuff like that. And if the girls don't agree to this stuff, you'll see the actual manager of these restaurants yell at the beer girls, kick them out. Like, I learned this when I was in Fontier. She was telling me about it, how one of the girls last week, because there was a girl that I knew, like she was always there, and I always gave her like extra tips. She was a really sweet girl, and she's always trying to learn English with me, so we would talk a little bit all the time. But she got fired because apparently some guy was like groping her breast when he was drunk, and then she refused to go back, and they fired her because she wouldn't do her job. Like, that's insane to me. So I understand why waitresses and stuff like that are kind of shitty on the customer service, but at the same time, a lot of waiters and waitresses, they sit on Facebook and TikTok the whole time, ignoring you. So it's kind of a weird thing, but in general, there's no real good customer service in Vietnam. Like, it's pretty shitty. If you are Westerner in the tourist area, it's typically pretty good. Like, honestly, again, this is kind of getting outside of the tourist area. And the last one, traffic, transportation, and the sidewalk. And yes, we have to talk about a sidewalk because that's where the fights happen. Vietnam traffic is seriously some of the worst I've ever seen. And I know there's India, there's Mexico, there's China. I get that. Their traffic is bad. The difference with Vietnam is there's no rules, there's no regulation. The police don't even like enforce the laws. Like, it's just pure chaos. And to make it worse, a lot of, like, you see cars out here, a lot of people that buy cars out here that are Vietnamese, they typically just got their driving permit like a day or two before they bought the car. So typically, the way they're learning to drive is when they drive off the parking lot, or even the dealership person will be like, this is the gear, this is the gas, this is the brake, good fucking luck. That's literally how people learn in Vietnam, because the license process in Vietnam, you typically just pay a fee and they just give you a license. There's no driving test. There is, but I'm gonna be honest with you, bro, I think 99% of people don't take it. There's literally no common education when it comes to automobiles out here. I know this has nothing to do with the traffic part, but I'm just kind of telling you a fun part about Vietnam. You see hoods up, like a car's parked on the side of the hood up. They're not showing off their engine. This isn't Fast and Furious. They're literally cooling their engine down. That's literally what a radiator's for. But in general, like the driving, it's out of control. The cars, the motorbikes, it's all chaotic. And a lot of people tell me this, and I get this story a lot. Like, well, cars are new in Vietnam, David. It's been like 23 years. And I get that. And it has been 23 years. You know, I remember when cars, I don't remember personally, but remember when, does anybody remember that watches the video? When the Ford Model T came out in America, people weren't driving around on sidewalks running horses over and shit like that. They were literally taking the cars apart as the horse passed them. You know what I mean? Like, there was early regulations. There was rules to follow. Police, the sheriffs in town would regulate how people drove their Ford Model Ts, right? In Vietnam, there is no enforcement of driving laws. Like, I think when it comes to Vietnam, you typically get pulled over for not using a blinker, not wearing a helmet, running a red light sometimes. I think sometimes happens. When it comes to cars though, like they typically just pull cars over randomly. Like I ended up renting a car for like 3 months when I was living in Fontaine, and I used to get pulled over all the time for no reason. Like they would just pull over 5 cars in a row, and they would just be like, your blinker's not on. You're like, bro, it's a straight road. Like nothing's truly enforced when money's involved. That's why I said at the beginning of this video, when I talked about the cool things I like about Vietnam, is you can buy your way out of anything. You can literally buy yourself out of anything. And just to kind of make it funny, like I have Vietnamese friends that visit me sometimes from Orange County. They'll fly out here like every couple of years. And one of my friends, he's a Vietnamese American. His father is originally from South Vietnam. He's a first generation American. And he lived in Vietnam for 6 years. Like this is like 2010 to whatever. And he told me this like metaphor of how Vietnam driving is. And I think it's funny. Some people think it's racist or offensive, but I think it's seriously funny. But his idea was like, imagine a zoo full of monkeys that are on go-karts, that haven't haven't eaten in like a week. And somebody comes by randomly, just throws one banana into the cage, and everybody is racing to get that banana because they're starving. That is literally Vietnam driving in a nutshell. And if you are Vietnamese watching this and you are a police officer, I'm gonna give you some financial advice to make you one of the richest people in Vietnam before 11 a.m. Go stand on a corner and enforce 50% of your laws. I promise you, everybody's breaking a law out here. All you gotta do is pull them over, get a fine, on their way, right? There's my advice. Now, when it comes to sidewalks and crossing the road, there's no system to it. I know these YouTubers do these videos like, how to cross a road on Vietnam, shut up. Like there is no fucking system on how to cross a road in Vietnam. You walk and you don't get hit. Like that's simply what it is. If there is any advice, just walk straight. Don't make any sudden movements and just kind of walk slow. Vietnamese always have to be in front of somebody. Like you'll see it, like traffic driving, people are constantly passing each other that are not going any faster than they were before. They just have to pass everybody. Somebody will be merging into a lane, somebody will speed up just to get in front of them. It's insanity to me. And that kind of stuff can happen while you're crossing the road and you can get hit. If you get hit in Vietnam by a motorbike or a car, nothing's gonna happen in your favor. Like nobody cares. Most bikes, 99% of bikes just take off. Like they don't care. They see a Western person on the ground bleeding, they're the ones that hit you, they're gone. Like they're not staying around because it's just gonna be too much drama for them. Like, and the cop's gonna extort them for a bunch of money that you won't even get. So that's not gonna happen. When I talk about sidewalks, in South Vietnam, sidewalks are pretty much overflow. When it's heavy traffic, which is most of the time, Vietnamese drive on sidewalks. When it comes to central North Vietnam, it's not as bad because this is something the police actually enforce. When I was just in Hanoi, actually, I started seeing people drive a lot more on sidewalks, so it seems like the police are starting to not enforce that too. I mean, why are the police in Vietnam at this point? Like littering is normal, traffic laws don't even get abide by, like noise regulations are ignored. Like why are you guys even cops? What are you guys doing? Whatever it is, when you're on a sidewalk, like it's pretty much a battle. You might as well walk in the middle of a highway. If you can avoid walking on sidewalks, it's probably the best way to go. And this is something that a lot of Western people deal with. Do watch out for that. If you do rent cars out here, I'd strongly avoid it. Like, even if you don't get harassed by the police, everything else is a fee. The park anywhere is a fee. If you drive on the highway or the freeway, there's like a fee every 20 kilometers. And it usually runs between $5 to $30. Like to drive from Saigon to Fontaine typically costs like $40 to $50 because of the highway fee. So you have to drive through the city to avoid these. But now, instead of a 2-hour drive, it's a 6-hour drive or a 7-hour drive. So it's just like, you can't truly win. So if you can avoid renting a car long term, I would. Buying a car, you're ridiculous. Like past the paperwork, it's insane, but it's just not worth it. If you need a car for the weekend, rent one. And if anything, just call a taxi. And like honestly, if you're gonna go like I think it honestly would be cheaper to rent a taxi for 100 kilometers than to rent a car and go through all that bullshit. Crazy, right? So I think that's enough shit on Vietnam today. So hopefully you guys learned something from this, or at least it gave you an insight on why a lot of people don't return to Vietnam, and at least give you kind of a heads up on what to be ready for, because these are things that they really do kind of piss people off. With that being said, I do want to stress, Vietnam is an amazing country. And today we are talking about living here long term and getting outside the tourist areas. Come here as a tourist, enjoy it. It's an amazing experience. My first year here, dude, loved it out here. It was so nice that I quit my job as an engineer and moved here. Like that's how nice it is in Vietnam. It's so cool. So come out here for 3 6 months, get a job, get a work permit, or just get a tourist visa. Hang out here for 3 to 6 months. Live out here. See what you think about it before you make that long-term commitment. There's this rule that we have as expats. It's called the 7-year rule. I made it up, so maybe it's not within the expats, but typically after about 7 years, people leave. Most get stressed, and then they kind of just like, they grow up, I guess is a good word. And the deal with a lot of what goes on in this country is it's just too much. And for you guys that watch this video, you're like, oh, I want to retire in Vietnam. This could be my dream. I'm going to sell everything and do that. Again, I would come out here. Don't sell the house and the car. Come out here for 3 to 6 months, live out here and really experience it. And think about, like, if you retire, what is your ideal like situation? Like a quiet day at home with your wife and the grandkids, you know, on the porch reading the book or sitting by the beach and, you know, just kind of relaxing. If that's your mindset of what you want to do when you retire with your white picket fence and whatnot, that's not going to happen in Vietnam. But out of 365 days a year, I'm pretty sure 9 to 10 months of them are going to be very loud, stressful, and annoying, and not what you expected as a retirement life. If you have any questions, let me know below. The video that I was kind of referencing this from, it just really went left field with, is in the link below. And if you are coming out here to teach, check out some of these Vietnam videos. And if you want to know more about teaching out here, living out here, retiring out here, visas out here, I got you covered. So with that being said, guys, I'm going to get out. I will see you again